Okay, so thank you very much. It has been very enlightening. I would just ask the presenters to come and sit down with us. I just want to signal out some points. You know, we had a very good view of Bolsa Familia. We had a view of inter-country geographical divide or mobility hotspots, intergenerational elasticity of income. So that's something that we can look at for our questions. The measurement of upward mobility, which was so interesting to hear. Evolution of economic inequality, upward mobility. Then I would just comment on the history of and the effects of multi-generational effects on adults and children, which was very encouraging. And then some of the aspects that we addressed regarding the benefits of not homogeneously distributed long-run benefits of conditional cash transfers. So without further ado, I will open the floor for questions. Just first, a big applause to our presenters. I think that they have done great. We have people from different regions. I want just say that we have people from South America, from Chile, Brazil, also from Africa, from the global South in general. So we just encourage you to make your, post your questions. And so if there's anything that you feel that you need to say before we open the floor, you can say so. We are ready to hear you, or we open the floor for questions. Is that okay? Okay, so so we open the floor. So there we have we could take 3 questions we have on this side. Maybe we can take the 3 questions and we address them one by one. Thank you.
Hi, so I have 2 questions. One is about wealth inequality versus income inequality. Like, so I guess my example usually Sweden has low income inequality, but high wealth inequality. And I think the Brazil question would be, it's probably both. So the US has high income inequality, but then wealth might be slightly less. I wonder if you can use your machinery, or have you thought about that? And for the last paper, I want to be a bit provocative. You said it was a bad policy, but it did have a lot of growth. Do you think there is a trade-off there between these poor laws and the growth that they got afterwards? It was very bad for the poor people that lost the poor laws, but they did have growth. So I wonder if there's a trade-off, if you thought about that.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for the excellent presentations. I have a question to Diogo. Or, a comment. I would like to understand a bit more the details about how you measured informal income. I think that would be really useful for others here in the room who do data collections, because it's extremely difficult to measure that. Thank you.
Hi, I also have a question for Diogo. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about how you deal with the, when you're doing the regional variation in mobility, how you deal with just the sort of baseline differences in wealth across each region. Like, for example, if I'm live in a poor region, the probability that I'm going to be at a higher ranking of the whole country is really small because the region where I live in is really poor. So how does the sort of like the differences in where the regions place in the overall country distribution play a role in when you're calculating the sort of overall mobility for each region, if that makes sense?
Yes, so I think that we already have 3 questions and comments. So if you feel free to address them, maybe we can go in order, or so that we can just maybe interact a little bit. So, yes.
Okay. Thanks for the great questions. So first about wealth inequality. Yeah, I mean, so far I'm not aware of like very detailed estimates of wealth inequality in Brazil. Maybe that could come as a further step from our work. I think we're starting to have nice work of that, like based in the US. And again, we're starting with the countries where the best data is, in the Scandinavian countries. Maybe as a next step, that's something that could be done in Brazil. One nice feature of the Brazilian IRS is that it might be a bit unusual, but like people who report to the IRS, they must report their wealth fully. So in theory, I mean, we have a measure of that. So I see that there will be a way to move forward along these dimensions, which would be great. Regarding the second question about measuring informal income, how we do that. So essentially what we do, so first we take advantage that the Brazilian national statistics, that they have a long tradition of estimating informal income, which is also, of course, part of their estimates of GDP, and that's commonly asked in surveys, I think, as it happens to many countries. So people are asked about their informal income, and I think most of them, they report truthfully different. In some other countries, that tends to be related to tax evasion and so on. But in Brazil, my feeling at least, it's a normal thing. That's a part. I mean, if you are a worker and if you're an informal worker, if anything, you're a victim, and that you do not have your contract signed. So I think that's the best estimate that you have. So essentially, what we do, we use this survey data that has been collected over the years, and in each year, we train machine learning models where, using an array of information about individuals, we train these machine learning models to predict their informal income over the years, and we train that based on rich information that you can both observe in the survey data and that you can observe also in our administrative data. So we train that in the survey data, and then you go back to our administrative data, and we do our best prediction that you can about people's informal income. And yeah, and then we have several steps also to validate how well the estimates do with these predictions. Of course, there will be some measurement error and so on. I'm happy to discuss that further if you're interested, but I'll stop here on that, but I'm happy to discuss also after the panel. And regarding differences across regions, so everything that you have shown there, they are relative to the income distribution in entire Brazil. So in the map, we are comparing sort of equally poor children who grew up in different areas. Then, when they grow up as an adult, if an area doesn't offer much of an opportunity, some of them, I mean, they can migrate towards richer areas and so on. So what you do essentially is to measure how much money they make, and again, benchmark then against the national income distribution. So some of them might not move upward because they stay in the same areas that do not offer much opportunity, and this is part of what you measure, that this is part of the immobility. And if you wonder about also price differences across areas, that they may change a lot and so on, this is also something that you try to take into account. So if you consider price differences, actually what you find is something very correlated with that graph, like very strongly correlated. So it doesn't change much the results, actually. So yeah, I will pass the word.
So going to the question about the poor law and its kind of how to assess the cost-benefit analysis. It's a great question, and one that we're thinking about a lot. Like, it's entirely possible that in the long run the government saved money because they're, by saving 1% of GDP, maybe there was, as you said, the poor people suffered, but like in terms of the government budget, like it was, it may have been worth that trade-off. I think when we have more about like mortality and marriage and these sort of like other kind of social outcomes rather than just like children's schooling, we'll have a better sense of that. We'll also try and get a sense of what wages were. They didn't ask about those in the census, but to actually like quantify an internal rate of return or these various measures, we just need to know like more dollar or I guess pound amounts. one thing, it's hard to say like how much this contributed to, you know, like England's industrial revolution, but one thing that we're seeing when we've done some more preliminary analysis is that these, you know, these low-skilled jobs that these people are more likely to be in seem to be more like if you've seen Downton Abbey, like they basically go from working as wheat farmers to working as butlers or maids in the Lord's manor or house or whatever it may be. So they may be like, again, the poorest people may be missing out on the Industrial Revolution, and so that can have, you know, lots of other interesting effects as well.
So I think we have another. Do you want to answer the question, or do you no comments on? Yeah. Okay. So we have, I think, on the same area, we had, I think, quite a few questions. So could you raise your hand again so that we can just sum three up again? And
thank you. I'm Dan Gilligan. Guido, on the Bolsa Familia long-run effects, super interesting work. I'm wondering if you've explored heterogeneity with regard to gender. I was part of the team that evaluated Bolsa Familia and the short-term effects, and we found for education distinct effects on girls and null effects for boys. So I'm super curious about whether that you see kind of a legacy of that. Thanks.
I had two questions. One about Bolsa Familia. I was curious why you generated a binary variable for predicted status rather than using the continuous probability, since it seems like a lot of information was thrown out there, and also I was unsure as to that whether these results would be robust to other cutoffs for predicted probability. And then for John, I was interested in your point about the quality-quantity trade-off. My understanding, not being a demographer, is that that's essentially a post-industrial phenomenon, and that pre-industrial, that relationship could be flat or even reversed, that higher income families would have more gross fertility and also more net fertility with higher rates of child survival. And you're kind of bridging those two periods. So I was wondering if you were confident that the quality-quantity relationship would in fact be negative.
so can we take another one? Just there.
Hello, thank you very much. I'm Claudia Robles from ECLAC. I found very interesting the four works, actually. It's very interesting, very stimulating. Congratulations to all of you. And I think particularly at looking at Diogo and Guido's work, that of course it can be replicated well, at least throughout Latin America, we have a lot of information on catch transfers, and it would be very interesting. Just a comment for that I think it applies for all of you. What would be your recommendations for policy design based on information that you have gathered? Because it's very rich information and probably would make very good recommendations for improving their policy designs. Thank you very much.
So we're kind of running out of time. We have like 10 minutes left. So if there's another question, we could also maybe. So, thank you.
So, thank you. I'm Vinicius Schwab from Bocconi University. I have actually a question for Professor Gerrans. I found it very interesting, your presentation. And about this status state of inequality, I was wondering, do you have an explanation for this? Like, are there structural factors that can explain it and maybe change throughout time? Thanks.
Yes, yeah, or maybe we can do a little bit of gender parity if you would like to take the floor already. You're okay? Yeah.
Sure. So I don't have a good explanation. I was surprised by the result. I was, very interested in looking at those inequality traps, and so I was the first one to be surprised that we are really not finding it. What I can tell you is that clearly what we are seeing in the data is a very diverging relationship between baseline inequality and subsequent equalization, and persistence on the other hand. So the work on, as I showed, the intergenerational elasticity of income is made of two terms. One that is more the correlation coefficient, capturing exchange mobility, and the other would be more a measure of equalization or increasing inequality. Clearly, that change in inequality is going to be very correlated, and we checked it is, with our measure of relative upward mobility. That is a measure of equalization or not. And so this is telling us that the pattern that you're seeing between inequality and persistence would be only stronger than what's shown by the Great Gatsby curve. So there seems to be, the pattern that we are seeing is that more inequality seems to be going with more proper growth or more, readjustment of the inequality, more equalization, but at the same time, more persistence along the lineage. And if I may, I'm going to add a question for you too. I'm curious about, this is more about the way you're actually doing. The fact is that some of your independent variable in your second part of your estimation are estimated. And when I did that in the past, the way I dealt with it was to bootstrap the full thing, to take into account the uncertainty from the prediction model when looking at the conclusion. And I don't know, I just wanted to check that you guys were doing that, and maybe there's a better way to do that.
Thanks. Should I? Okay, thanks a lot. So I will start with this question. Yes, you're completely right. Now would have to look again in the paper if we bootstrap them or not, but you are completely right that this would be the way to go. So yeah, thanks for this reminder. Thanks a lot also for the other questions. So I will start with the one on heterogeneous effects by gender. Thanks a lot for this. Actually, yes, so we look at heterogeneous effects by gender. We do not find any significant difference between men and women in the long run impact, neither in absolute nor in relative terms. What we do find is interesting heterogeneities within the group of women. So, for example, the childless versus those with one or more children, the married ones versus the other ones. We find, and in the case of Bolsa Familia, we find an effect, especially on the labor market of the married women and those with children, which is in contrast with what we had found for Chile Solidario, which was the other way around. What we are exploring now is demographic effects in the long run on fertility, marriage patterns, and so on. And I will keep you updated about our findings. Thanks a lot. About the continuous probability as another measure instead of 0,1, great comment. Thanks a lot. We will explore this. This is actually a great idea. We will see how we can include this in our framework. We were thinking more about the diff and diff scenario, but you're completely right. This could be explored as well. So thanks for this comment. And then there was a question on the recommendations for policy. I mean, of course, the recommendation of policies in this case, let's say the content-wise recommendations would be, look, what is the problem that creates some structural deficiencies for Afro-Americans still, although they get the same level of education or a higher level of education, they cannot translate it on the labor market, so something is going on there that should be explored. This would be in this special case the recommendation for policy. As a researcher, a recommendation for policy to give us the tools to study this better would be, of course, give access to data like the one Diogo is using, but also include questions and surveys that capture more retrospective information. I think this would be very, very valuable because this helps us actually a lot to learn more about the dynamics of changes in the distribution and so on. So this would be my researcher point of view on policy recommendations. And may I ask a question since I have the microphone for grants? So since we were speaking about this yesterday, and maybe I would like you to share also this view with the audience on equality of opportunity, right? Which is what we want somehow to measure with mobility, and some measures of mobility could be better correlated with it and some less. So what would be your view on your measure of mobility? How is it related to equality of opportunity? What are your insights on this? Thanks. And would you answer directly, or should I first give it to...
Go directly.
Okay. Thanks a lot again.
This is a very interesting question, but I don't like to speculate before having checked, and so it would be very interesting to know where is that self-regulation that we see a little bit with inequality. And where is it coming from? It could come from, you know, a policy like education. It could come from something more structural about where the growth catching up is happening when there's more equalization. I actually don't know.
Yeah, so I go back to the question on the recommendation for policy, and so let me focus on Brazil and Bolsa Família, which is the program that I definitely know best. So I generally have mostly great things to say about the program, you know, because Bolsa Família, to me, it has seemed to be like a success of targeting, like reaching a lot of people who are living below the poverty line, and it's also a program that you think about the amount of the transfers. It is relatively small, so it's not so costly per person. And all the evidence that I know, the best evidence that I know regarding the program, like indicates have a positive message. So, for example, these incentives to work, like best estimates that I know, they show like no or very small reductions in labor supply, informal labor supply. Recent papers, so my evaluation, Guido's evaluation, also point at very large benefits for the long run. Some other papers showing that there are also positive effects thanks to local multipliers in the local economy. So I think it's a fantastic program. And yeah, I hope also to move forward to do a more proper cost-benefit analysis, but I think that's a great policy that should not be discontinued, in my opinion. And also just, can I have a final comment? We are... Yeah, I know. I just wanted to say that's great to see also Guido's evaluation on the program and leverage survey data. So I have been discussing a lot with people at WIDER who work a lot with African countries. And, you know, they wanted to do some mobility estimates, similar to what we have done in Brazil. There is some admin data starting to be available. So that's one path for trying to combine the two. But at the same time, in some places, we just don't have this type of data. And having an approach such as Guido's and also trying to improve survey data to be more retrospective may allow us to answer very important questions that are not possible with the data available. So that's... Yeah.
Who needs lunch anyway?
Just another minute. Jessica had asked about, I mentioned the quantity-quality trade-off, and you know, like, at what point does it switch from being, you know, like richer families have more children versus they start having fewer children? It's tough to like give a starting date for the Industrial Revolution. Like no one stormed the Bastille and declared, you know, that it's now started. My understanding in the U.S., we think of it the Second Industrial Revolution beginning in 1870 with railroads and stuff like that, and so it had begun in England, I think maybe a few decades earlier. So the econometrics is, you know, very noisy. So in that sense, we're not very confident, but we do feel like, you know, this is the point where human capital is starting to matter a lot more in the UK. And manufacturing, because it was so new, was actually like very high human capital because you needed the cognitive flexibility to deal with all these new things. So yes, kind of conceptually we're confident, empirically not so much.
Yes, so I think we're almost closing this. I just want to say that I was thinking about the fact that we have history here, very, insightful views on this upward mobility, which I'm very curious about. And then what we have seen about, the results in the ground. So I think I would encourage you you four to work together, because I think something very interesting would come out. I want to thank, our presenters, the research, which are really fantastic and offer very insightful views on the relationship between inequality and opportunity, which was mentioned here, and also how these transfers can break the cycle of poverty, but then how we see that there can be upward mobility in certain situations where we don't expect it. So I think that research and the measurement is so important. And then going back to history. So I would just encourage you to do the networking with this magnificent doctors, professors. I want to, say our kudos to our host country, Finland, where I have been living 3 years. They're a big example on mobility and how, social security can forge better societies. So thank you also to the team of UNU-WIDER that have done a great job. We still have a long run today and tomorrow with this fantastic lecture that promises so much. And thank you everybody for being here, and obviously to the great team from UNU-WIDER. So thank you very much, and for the team that's doing all the visuals, the sound, which has been fantastic. And so a big round of applause to our presenters, and to you also for being here. Thank you.